Right, welcome back to the Dragon Age A to Z and to the letter G, and we're a week in. We're a week into our videos, which means we've only got, what, 2 and a bit weeks left until Veilguard? 2 and a bit weeks? It's not long. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. We can make it. I believe in us. Right, we begin with the Grey Wardens. The Grey Wardens are an order dedicated to fighting the Darkspawn. They are widespread across all of Thedas, but remain politically neutral on all matters, and will take Wardens from any race or background without discrimination. They have the power to invoke the right of conscription on whoever they see fit, and this right overrules all other powers in Thedas. If they want to take a criminal sentenced to death, they can. They want to take a mage from the circle, they can. They want to pluck the Divine herself off the Sunburst throne and stick her in a Grey Warden armour for the rest of her life, they totally can. Even she wouldn't have any say in the matter. Once you join the Grey Wardens, you cannot leave. At least not officially. As Anders proves in Dragon Age 2, you can run away and hide if you really want to. However, there are certain permanent consequences to becoming a Warden that can't be shaken off. So, all Wardens undertake a joining ritual. Not much is really understood about this ritual other than the fact that Darkspawn blood is used, and some even define it as a kind of blood magic. Yeah, I'm not really sure what they do with the Darkspawn blood, but during the joining, the Warden ingests the blood and becomes infected with the Darkspawn taint. Now, when you just ingest Darkspawn blood normally, because we've encountered people who drink Darkspawn blood, Rook in Origins, and also Hespeth in Origins. Rook was consuming Darkspawn blood to hide himself from the Darkspawn, so he was infecting himself with the taint so that the Darkspawn would see him as one of them and they wouldn't attack him. So people do just like drink Darkspawn blood sometimes, and what happens is they become ghouls, or they die. They either die or they become ghouls. But when the Grey Wardens ingest the blood during the ritual, they still become infected with the blight, but the effects of the taint are slowed down somehow, allowing the Warden to live for decades before succumbing to it, and they gain abilities in the meantime, right? So we don't really know what they do to the blood to sort of change the effects of it. But, I mean, the taint is definitely still killing them, it's just killing them much slower, and they sort of, like, retain their sort of sanity, whereas, you know, the ghouls tend to go a little bit mental. So the Grey Wardens can sense the Darkspawn and know when they are near. They are immune to the taint, as they're already infected with it, and they are the only ones who can kill the archdemons. So should an archdemon be slain by an ordinary person, their soul simply jumps into the nearest Darkspawn host. If a Grey Warden kills an archdemon, the Darkspawn, where the archdemon soul jumps into the Grey Warden, consumes the Grey Warden, and both are destroyed. Yeah, so interestingly, the Darkspawn seem to be a kind of hive mind. Like a sort of collective consciousness type thing, a bit like the Borg. They're sort of like fantasy version of the Borg, and the Grey Wardens can sort of tap into that, but still retain their individuality within it, which is kind of interesting. It's also worth noting that the joining ritual is often fatal. Like, a lot of people die in the joining ritual. So, the Grey Wardens were founded at Weishaupt Fortress in the Anderfels during the First Blight from a group of magisters and soldiers who came together, renounced their oaths to the Tevinter Imperium, and declared themselves the Grey Wardens. Exactly at what point they realised they could use Darkspawn blood to enhance their abilities against the Darkspawn is unclear. We do know that several attempts were made to kill the Archdemon Dumat during the First Blight before the joining was discovered. So, yeah, I don't really know whether they were Grey Wardens, like they all just got together and said, we're going to be the Grey Wardens and we're going to fight the Darkspawn, and they went off to fight the Darkspawn. And then, like, I mean, the First Blight lasted, oh, this is off the top of my head, at least 100 years, I think longer than that. So I don't know, like, how long they were around calling themselves Grey Wardens before they actually discovered the joining ritual, or if they discovered the joining ritual and then sort of said, everybody who undertakes this joining is going to be a Grey Warden. I don't kind of know what came first, the Wardens or the ritual, but anyway. So, the Grey Wardens are an ancient, proud, and typically well-respected order. They possess ancient treaties with the major powers of Thedas, compelling them to give aid against the Darkspawn during a blight. So they have a lot of power, actually. They can conscript anybody that they want, and then they can sort of, like, use these treaties to sort of say how you're going to come and help us. I don't care that you're an emperor, I don't care what's going on with you, I don't care how much power you have in your own little corner of the world. Right now, you're going to come and join my army and fight the Darkspawn. Like, they have that power. So it's kind of good that they are politically neutral, I suppose. Because it's power that could be easily abused, let's say. They are also respected as outstanding warriors, particularly by the dwarves, who fight alongside them in the Deep Roads quite often. Yes, but only like, because so many of them died during the joining ritual, like only the strongest survived the joining ritual, so that's probably one of the reasons why they're well-respected warriors. Plus, I suppose if you're not a particularly good warrior, you're not going to last that long, are you? So, you know, if you're a Grey Warden and you're still alive after a year, you're probably pretty good. They are also an order which holds many secrets, particularly about the Blight and the ancient Darkspawn. We know that after the first Blight, the Wardens discovered several talking Darkspawn similar to the Architect. One of those was Corypheus, who they imprisoned for centuries using blood magic. What other secrets the Order may hold? Who can say? But I'm hoping we're going to find out a few of them when we go to Weishaupt in Veilguard. Honestly, the thing I'm most excited for about Veilguard is getting to go to Weishaupt. I've wanted to go to Weishaupt for ages. And yeah, I've always wanted to know what other secrets they know. I think the Grey Wardens could be the key to a lot of, like, ancient history. I think they probably know a lot that they're not telling anybody. But I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But if we don't discover some sort of like earth-shattering secret at Weishaupt, I'm going to be like bitterly disappointed. So yes, while they are generally very well respected and considered, you know, honourable and noble and all of that kind of stuff, the Grey Wardens are not quite as revered as they used to be. So in days of old, they rode into battle on griffins before the creatures became extinct, though they may be making something of a comeback, spoilers. By the time of Origins, it has been centuries since the last Blight, and much of the Wardens' heroism has been forgotten. Many believe there will not be another Blight, and the Wardens are no longer needed. Most of their ranks now consist of criminals, conscripted when execution was the only other option. They still command enough respect, however, for the hero of Ferelden to amass an army under their banner during the events of Origins. So, you know, people still kind of like, you know, they still, the name still carries a certain amount of weight. But, yeah, some people are sort of like, why do we need Grey Wardens? There aren't any Blights anymore. I have a personal headcanon, though. So, this is a personal headcanon. This is never mentioned in the games whatsoever. People often say, like, what do the Grey Wardens do when there isn't a Blight? And the Grey Warden answer is mostly just like, we stand vigilant. But I am assuming that they are in the Deep Roads keeping the Darkspawn contained, right? Because a Blight happens when the Darkspawn find an Archdemon, right? If the Grey Wardens are keeping them contained in certain areas of the Deep Roads, they're not going to be able to get out and find an Archdemon. Which could be why it's been centuries since the last Blight, right? So people are kind of saying, well, why do we need Grey Wardens when there aren't Blights anymore? It could be that there aren't Blights anymore because the Grey Wardens are doing such a good job of keeping the Darkspawn contained. But that's a personal headcanon. That's not mentioned anywhere in the games. Yes, so Grey Wardens have short lifespans due to the taint coursing through their veins. When they near the end of their lives, their dreams of the Darkspawn intensify and they can hear the song of the Archdemon more clearly. They call this the Calling, and most elect to travel into the Deep Roads and die fighting the Darkspawn rather than let the Blight take them. As a consequence, we don't really know what dying of the Calling looks like. Like, do they turn into a ghoul? Or do they just waste away and die? Do they turn into a Darkspawn? I don't know. Probably not. There's no mention of that anywhere. But it's interesting that they hear the call of the Archdemon. Because, of course, the Darkspawn hear the call of the Archdemons as well. That's kind of what they're driven by. Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of different ways that people die from the Blight. Like, some people become a ghoul, but then, like, not everybody infected with the taint actually becomes a ghoul. Like, Felix didn't in Inquisition, Alexius' son. Felix doesn't become a ghoul. He lives with the taint for years before eventually wasting away. So, who knows? During the events of Inquisition, Corypheus, who has the ability to influence the Grey Wardens, managed to make all of the Grey Wardens in the south hear the calling at once. In response, Warden Commander Clarel of Orlais forms an inadvisable alliance with the Venatori, somewhat sullying the name of the Wardens in the south. Corypheus also manages to sort of, like, the Grey Wardens fall under Corypheus' sway, and he sort of, like, takes over their minds and makes them do things. So they were also kind of, he managed to make them kind of involved with the Divine's death and things. There's a few Grey Wardens who fight alongside him in the Arbor Wilds and things like that because they've fallen under his sway. Yeah, and all of this kind of, like, the Wardens don't come out of it looking particularly good. Their name is quite sullied by the end, which I'm kind of annoyed about. I'm sort of like, I like the Wardens. I feel very loyal to the Wardens. The Wardens are my people, man. My people, the Wardens. Yeah, but it's only the Wardens in the south. I'm assuming the Wardens in the north are still sort of, you know, revered and whatnot. Next, Gaspard. So, Grand Duke Gaspard is a chevalier and member of the Orlesian royal family. Once heir to the throne, he is the nephew of Emperor Florian, who died childless. He did have a daughter, Emperor Florian, but she died during the sickness that also claimed his twin brother, Emperor Judasale. Jesus, there's a Targaryen name if ever I heard one, Judasale. That sounds like a Targaryen, doesn't it? I'm fresh off watching season 2 of House of the Dragon, so like my fantasy worlds are all colliding at the minute, and all I'm thinking like is just imagine if we could ride dragons in Dragon Age. You imagine? Actually, I'm coming up with a little sort of headcanon that the Qunari, the origins of the Qunari are actually like the Dragon Lords, and if you go across the sea from Thedas, you'll get to Essos or something like that. I'm like, maybe that's what's across the ocean. and yeah, like the Qunari were like originally Targaryens or something. But yeah, I just think it would be so amazing. Imagine if we could ride dragons in Dragon Age. I think that would be the best thing. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yes, Florian's brother. So, yes, Emperor Florian. His brother and his heirs all died, and Florian became the emperor, right? Putting Gaspard as next in line. However, upon Florian's death, Gaspard's cousin Celine politically outmaneuvered him and stole the throne from under him by winning over the Council of Heralds, who decide sort of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Inheritance disputes. Yes, but here's the interesting thing. So Celine had also conspired with Florian's lover to have him assassinated. So she had the upper hand all along, really. She had the Emperor assassinated, and then she moved in and got the Council of Heralds to elect her over Gaspard, who was technically the next in line. Although, interestingly, that same lover, the lover of Emperor Florian, right, who Celine conspired with to have Emperor Florian assassinated, Lady Mantillon? That's probably meant to sound more French than that, isn't it? Mantillon. That's how it sounds coming out of my mouth. Mantillon. Yes, she was the one who taught Gaspard the Orlesian game. So the game is the machinations of the nobility and the royal court and all the political scheming that goes on in Orlais. They call it the game. And she taught Gaspard the game, but she was also teaching Celine. And she conspired with Celine to assassinate the emperor and then put Celine on the throne. So, yeah. Interestingly, it is mentioned that Gaspard actually despises the game. Like, he hates all of the political intrigue and the backstabbing and all of that kind of stuff, but he sort of takes part in it out of necessity because, you know, it was the world he was born into. So, Gaspard married the daughter of Bastien de Ghislaine. That is the same Bastien that Vivian is the mistress of, by the way. However, his new wife decided it would be a good idea to kill Empress Celine's mother, or orchestrate her death anyway. I doubt she did it personally. And then Celine's father sort of took vengeance and killed her in retaliation, but not before she managed to poison him, killing him too. Jesus, this really is like Game of Thrones, isn't it? Christ almighty. So just to reiterate, Gaspard's wife killed Empress Celine's mother, Empress Celine's father killed her in retaliation, and she managed to poison him and kill him at the same time, so they killed each other. We got all that sorted? Marvellous. So... honestly. Gaspard is a celebrated soldier and a respected commander. So after Celine was crowned empress, Navarra invaded Orlais, and Celine sent Gaspard to go and deal with the crisis. So rather than fight a bloody battle and sacrifice countless lives, Gaspard decided to challenge the Navarran commander to a duel. So they were just like, we're going to decide this entire war based on one duel, right? That was apparently fine. He agreed to throw down his shield and fight with only a maul. He broke the commander's arm in less than a minute and accepted the Navarran surrender not long after. Gaspard grew disillusioned with Celine's rule after doubting her diplomatic methods. So it seems like the Orlesians, as far as I can tell, are like really against peace generally, right? They don't like peace, they like war. So Celine had improved relations with their former enemy Ferelden and was not taking a hot enough line against either the rebel mages or the elven uprisings that Orlais had been suffering. As far as people were concerned, you know, they were sort of like, yeah, we want Celine to be more kind of violent. She's too peaceful. She's kind of, you know, she's making friends with everybody, and we don't want to be friends. We want everybody to hate us. That seems to be kind of like the Orlesian line. And you know what? It actually amazes me that one of the main things that Celine was criticised for by, like, the Orlesian nobles was not being hard enough on the elves. Despite the fact that the elves in Orlais seem to be treated like the worst in all of Thedas, second only to Tevinter, where they are literally slaves. Like, Orlais is really bad when it comes to the treatment of the elves, and yet the Orlesian nobles were like, oh, not being hard enough on them elves, Celine. Like, yeah, that's like one of the main criticisms that she faced. Anyway, yes, so most of Orlais seems to see Celine as weak and also anti-military and anti-war, and Orlais just likes war. Apparently they want to be like conquering people, and Celine's kind of against that. She's like, no, let's be friends with everybody, and they're like, no, let's conquer everybody. So yes, as a result, Gaspard orchestrated a civil war against her, even managing to sway the Chevaliers to his side. So this war is resolved during Inquisition at the player's discretion, and you can choose which one of them to put on the throne. And honestly, I think it's such a shame that you have to choose between them, because, like, I really like them both, but for different reasons. Like, I mean, Gaspard, to me, comes across as genuinely charming, honourable, and, like, as honest as he can be in the world that he was born into. Sort of quite down to earth, like weirdly relatable compared to most of the Orlesian nobles. I mean, the whole kind of starting a civil war because the Empress is too peaceful and diplomatic thing is a bit shitty. But, you know, the situation was complicated, and she did steal his throne, to be fair. And Celine is not perfect either. Like, I really like Celine. But I'm not gonna, like, sit here and say that she's a perfect human being, because, like, she does a lot of, like, really questionable things. Like, on the surface, she's all about peace and making friends and, you know, being wonderful and everything like that. But, like, she's done some seriously underhand stuff in her time to hold on to her power. I mean, she assassinated the flipping emperor. Like, how, you know? So, I'm not defending her, nor am I defending him. But, like, they're both just such good characters. I really like both of them. So, yeah, I think it's such a shame you have to choose between them. Like, I wish you could just, like, marry them to each other or something. No, go full Game of Thrones. We'll go full Targaryen and just, like, you know, marry the two cousins to each other. Like, why not, man? Why not? It can be a political marriage. You wouldn't actually have to sleep together. Like, just do it. I think that would be... Why wasn't that an option? I wanted that to be an option. Anyway, yeah, so a huge chunk of Gaspard's story actually takes place during the book The Masked Empire, as does most of Celine's story, in fact. But I decided not to dig too deep into that for this little snippet of him. For one thing, it has been years since I read the book, so I don't know how accurate I could manage to be just from reading the synopses. But also, we're going to be covering the book in a few other entries, so I'd only end up repeating myself. So, yes, that's Gaspard. Now, I will tell you that the rest of this entire episode has been written by Fred. So, you know, thanks, Fred. He wrote the next 3 entries for me. So next up we have Gentiv. Brother Ferdinand Gentiv is the main in-universe historian of Thedas and the Chantry in the games. He is not a major figure in the games, but rather the type of character a developer would include to add a touch of realism and colour to the in-game lore. Hang on. I just need to... Fred's just missed a U out of colour. There we go. Add that in. Want to, you know, make sure we're spelling everything properly there. Frederick. Oh, he's written a joke next as well. I'm not going to be able to do it justice now. Yes, basically, basically Gentiv is kind of like, he writes about half of the flippin' codex entries, right? Almost every other codex entry that you stumble across is something that is written by Brother Gentiv. So, like, he's a historian, he's a writer, and he's just, like, written loads of, you know, books and things like that you're constantly tripping over, giving you nice, delicious codex entries. That is, like, most of how you encounter Gentiv in the games. So we first hear of Gentiv early on in Origins. The hero of Ferelden learns that the historian is part of an effort to discover the Urn of Sacred Ashes, more on that later, which is, as you might have guessed, an urn with sacred ashes in it. Well done, Fred. The ashes, which have miraculous healing powers, which is never quite explained, but again, we'll cover that later, are supposedly those of Andraste, prophetess of the Andrastian religion. Alas, the urn was lost centuries ago. Gentiv has been searching for the urn for years, and at the outset of the game, he had a breakthrough in his efforts. It turns out that the ashes are in a temple near a remote town called Haven. Unfortunately, the locals are a little bit unwelcoming and strange and very kind of inbred, I think. I think inbred is the main sort of thing, because they've kind of been stuck up there for generations, defending, sort of like, yes, protecting the urn, but nobody knows they're there, and I don't think many people are, like, coming and going. So I think they just end up very inbred and a little bit mental and quite culty. And yes, they believe that a local dragon is Andraste reincarnated, and they don't appreciate outsiders disturbing their batshit insane rituals. Anyway, yes, they kidnap Gentiv and they hold him hostage, as well as subjecting him to the odd bit of torture. They also do a fair amount to try and cover up Genitiv's disappearance. However, the Warden does manage to track Gentiv down and finds him as a prisoner of the cults in Haven. So he is alive, but he has a broken leg, I think. Which, if you have Morrigan or Wynne in the party, they both say that the leg will have to be amputated, but then later that's sort of gone back on a little bit, but we'll get to that in a minute. So yes, when you find Gentiv, you have three options. You can either take him along to the temple with you, send him back to Denerim, you can kill him. I mean, there isn't much reason to kill him, but you can do that if you're feeling particularly evil. Yes, if you bring him along to the temple and then you bring back a sample of the ashes for him, he's like really, really excited about it, and he wants to like tell the world that, you know, Andraste's ashes have been discovered, which may or may not be a good idea. But yes, if you destroy the ashes, which is one of your options, he's not very happy about it. But, you know, there's not much he can do about it because you're a Grey Warden with, you know, a giant sword and he's a scholar with a broken leg. Gentiv is mentioned quite a lot, but not seen in Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition. He is the writer of many of the Codex entries, as I've already said. And he also turns up in one of the Tevinter Nights stories. Yes, in the book Tevinter Nights, which is a collection of short stories. And the story is called Gentiv Dies in the End. But, spoilers, the title is ironic. But yes, interestingly, he definitely appears to have both of his legs in that story. So apparently Wynne/Morrigan were wrong about having to have his leg amputated in the Temple of Sacred Ashes. Also, I did mention that, yes, you can kill him at Haven, which would sort of like, if that was what you decided to do, it would make that Tevinter Nights story kind of like not compatible with your world state. However, I do have a headcanon theory for how you could explain it, because you can also kill Leliana at Haven, and yet she will still turn up alive and well in Inquisition. And the reason for this is sort of attributed to the fact that the mountain is full of lyrium. And that's sort of like, you know, has kind of magical properties. So it is possible, I suppose, that you could kill Gentiv and then he could come back to life. Because you killed him at Haven. Although, you see, the trouble with that is, then during Inquisition, like, loads of people die at Haven and they don't all come back, do they? So, I don't know. It's a potential explanation if you want one. Right, next, Uncle Gamlin.
I changed their filthy sheets and wiped their chins through 2 bouts of the cholera, and the last word Father said was... Leandra.
Oh, everybody's favourite uncle. Right. Gamlin Amell is the uncle of Hawke in Dragon Age 2. He is the classic example of the family member whose visit we dread during holidays and reunions. Jesus, Fred, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Oh, it gets worse. The kind of low-rent riffraff who'd make a string of cringe-worthy comments, then use the opportunity to try and hit you up for a loan that there's no chance he'll ever pay back. Gamlin is the son of Lord Aristide and Lady Bethan of House Amell in Kirkwall, and the younger brother of Leandra Amell. That is Hawke's mother. If the player imports a save file from Origins where the Grey Warden was a human mage, Gamlin is also a cousin, once removed, of the Warden, because, yes, if you play as a human mage in Origins, you are a Amell. And my Amell Warden, I always make her look like Bethany. Just so there's a bit of a link there, I kind of like that. You know, it appeals to me. At an early age, Gamlin became a gambling addict. He began sneaking out of the house to associate with various lowlives in Kirkwall, at least when he wasn't fooling around with Mara, the family's chambermaid, or indulging in the whores at the Blooming Rose. Gamlin also helped his sister Leandra sneak out of the house so she could see her boyfriend, apostate mage Malcolm Hawke. You wonder what Fred's written here. Horniness runs in the Amell family. Like, horniness just runs in humanity generally, Fred. I think you've been a bit harsh there, but alright. Leandra eventually eloped with Malcolm and ran off to Ferelden. Gamlin attended to his parents when they became old and sick, gaining control of the family estate when they finally passed on. He then promptly pissed most of it away on bad investments, using up the rest of the family fortune on gambling and whores. Anytime Hawke goes to the Blooming Rose, Gamlin is already there, sitting on his little stool by the bar, and you both kind of agree not to mention it to Leandra. So yes, by the time Leandra returns with her children to Kirkwall at the beginning of Dragon Age 2, Gamlin has lost the estate entirely and is living in a hovel in Lowtown. He is embittered and self-loathing, bit of an arsehole generally, really. If Hawke is in a romance with Isabella, Gamlin calls her a pirate slut and then asks Hawke what it's like to sleep with her. There's also a bit of banter with Isabella, I think in one of the DLCs, where she says that Gamlin's being inappropriate, and she kind of asks Hawke to, like, talk to him, be like, because she doesn't want to touch him, and she finds it very creepy and disturbing. So yeah, he's a bit of a lech, Gamlin. It is subsequently revealed that Gamlin never properly inherited the estate in the first place. The parents' will shows that the estate was supposed to go to Leandra and her children, with Gamlin living on a stipend. Yeah, I don't know. I sometimes think Gamlin's judged a bit harshly because, like, Leandra ran away with an apostate mage and went to live in Ferelden and never came back, right? And Gamlin was just kind of left to deal with it all, and he looked after the parents when they were sick. You know, he cared for them. He was the one who stayed and sort of did his, you know, duty to the family and all of that kind of stuff. And then apparently at the end, when I think it was the father was dying, his last words were like Leandra. He was asking for Leandra. But she never came back, and Gamlin, you know, she was the favourite child, and Gamlin knew that she was the favourite child, but she left and never came back, and he sort of dealt with everything that was left. And so I kind of don't really blame him for taking the estate. For gambling it away, yes, I blame him for that, but for, like, actually just taking it, I mean, he didn't think she was ever coming back. I kind of understand why he would be a bit bitter about it. You know, and he's not a total arsehole. He has some redeeming features. Like, he's not malicious, and he genuinely cares for his sister. He uses his connections in the underworld to get Hawke and their sibling, whichever sibling survives, work as either mercenaries or smugglers, enabling them to afford the bribes necessary to settle in Kirkwall. Yes, when Hawke manages to buy the Amell family estate back, Gamlin remains living in Lowtown, which I always find a bit strange. It's not quite sure why. Like, it's not clear if he's, like, not welcome, or if he just doesn't want to move in. Him and Leandra stay on good terms, like, they visit with each other regularly, they sort of meet up and stuff like that, so, you know, they're not... It's not like they fell out or anything. I don't really know why Gamlin doesn't come to live with you. Yes, Gamlin is also, like, genuinely quite heartbroken when Leandra is murdered at the end of Act 2, so, yeah, he has a heart, Gamlin, he really does. I feel a bit sorry for him a lot of the time, to be honest, as much as he is a cunt. He's a cunt, but I feel a bit bad for him. Yeah. There's also a little side quest with him near the end of the game that reveals that Gamlin had a daughter with the family chambermaid, who is rather wonderfully called Charade, which I think is the best name in the world. Yes, and you can help him meet up with her. And so, you know. Yeah, you know, he gets a bit of a happy ending that he gets to meet up with his long-lost daughter. Which brings us to our final entry, Golems. So, Golems in Dragon Age are living stone and metal warriors created by the dwarves to bolster their armies. So, yes, this is interesting. I didn't know this until Fred told me. But they are originally from Jewish folklore that dates back to the 16th century. So there we go. Fred managed to out-history me. Well done, Fred. I'm impressed. I'm genuinely impressed. Yes, so Jewish golems were hulking animated monsters created out of clay or mud by rabbis in order to protect their villages. The term golem in the English language subsequently came to mean any creature created and brought to life through unnatural means. Frankenstein's monster is sometimes described as a golem made out of flesh, for example. There we go. There we go, that's Fred bringing us interesting facts. So in Dragon Age, the dwarves constructed their golems out of solid rock, iron or steel, and they are as strong and durable as that would suggest. They require no food, rest or air to breathe, which is useful in underground cities, I suppose. The smallest ones appear to be around 7 feet tall, while others can be as high as 10 feet. Golems can squash most organic creatures like they were bugs, and their prowess in combat can be further augmented through the use of lyrium-infused crystals. The first dwarven golems were created by the paragon Caradin using a device he created, the Anvil of the Void. The deep dark secret of this process is that the creation of a golem requires a living soul to be permanently transferred into these constructs. If you're asking, wait, how does hitting an anvil with a hammer transfer a soul into a stone or metal body? I thought dwarves couldn't do magic. Well, stop asking so many damn questions, says Fred. That's Fred's words, not mine. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Because it seems very magical, and yet the dwarves can't do magic. But lyrium itself is magical. Like, lyrium has magical properties. And when you see the Anvil of the Void, it definitely seems to be infused with lyrium. Because, like, dwarves can enchant things, and that's magic, but they use lyrium to enchant stuff. So it could just be that the anvil is, like, an anvil that's got a really powerful enchantment on it, maybe. But yes, the process of how they actually made the golems is not entirely explained. It's one of those things that you just kind of have to go, oh, it's a fantasy world, just deal with it, it's fine, just shut up. Don't ask too many questions. Yeah, so the process wipes clean the person's memory. The golems remain sentient and aware, but are subject to orders given by the person who has the golem's control rod. A little bit like the Cybermen in Doctor Who, I always think. They're sort of like, you know, they're trapped inside the golem suits, and they're conscious and aware, but they're not in control. Which sounds sort of horrific. So originally the golems were made from dwarven volunteers. When the number of willing participants dwindled, the dwarven king at the time started volunteering other people against their will. It started with criminals and the casteless, and then soon the king's political enemies were being volunteered. Eventually it got to the point where kind of like everybody was sort of fair game, to be honest. So, you know, you could just be like, yeah, you look at somebody the wrong way and it's like, oh, you're going for the golem volunteer program now. So, you know. Yeah, so Paragon Caradon objected to the use of these non-volunteer volunteers and soon found himself also being volunteered to become a golem. Unfortunately, the Dwarven King who ordered Caradon's conversion didn't really think this plan through, as it turned out that while the other dwarf smiths knew enough to use the anvil to create new golems, Caradon was the only one who knew how to wipe the subject's memories and how to create the control rods, which was very clever on his part. Yeah, just like not telling other people how to make the control rods. I think that was a good decision. So yes, basically by turning Caradon into a golem, the dwarves now had a pissed off giant metal monster that nobody knew how to control. And you would think they would have thought of that before they did it. I mean, I know they were under orders from the king and everything, but you think they would have been like, how? We're going to turn him into a golem and then we're not going to be able to control him. So yes, Caradon, because nobody could really stop him, Caradon grabbed the anvil and ran off with it and went and hid in the city of Bonamar. Tig, that should be Fred. They're not cities, they're tigs. But you know, that's okay. I'll let that one slide, Fred. You know, yeah. Since you're being nice and writing these scripts for me, I'll let that one slide. So yes, Caradon ran away with the anvil, went and hid in Bonamar, and then they couldn't make any more golems after that. So without them, the dwarven armies faltered and were forced into retreat, and the Darkspawn overwhelmed the deep roads, and the Dwarven Empire fell, which was all Caradon's fault. We'll blame Caradon. I mean, we could also blame Corypheus. And, you know, many other people. But, like, yeah, we'll blame Caradon. In Origins, you have a golem companion, Shale, a former dwarven warrior, who volunteered to be transformed and eventually ended up as the property of a human mage on the surface. Shale killed the wizard, though she's not exactly sure why. The main theory presented in the game is that the mage accidentally entered the kill master command on the control rod. The mage's widow then deactivated Shale and gave away the control rod. The golem spent years as a statue in the centre of the mage's village, alive and aware but unable to move and regularly getting shat on by the birds, which I imagine was not much fun for anyone, really. By the time the Grey Warden finds and reanimates Shale, the control rod is broken, giving Shale free will. The golem agrees to travel and fight alongside the Grey Warden because it is literally bored and has nothing else to do. Plus, it provides Shale an opportunity to exact its revenge on birds, and to also squish many humans. She seems to really like squishing humans. Like squishing humans is right up there on Shale's hobby list. Caradon himself is encountered in Origins during the Anvil of the Void quest, where the Grey Warden has the choice of either helping Caradon destroy the anvil once and for all, or preserving it so that the dwarves can once again bolster their armies with the stone and metal monsters. Choosing the latter means condemning an unknown number of dwarves to becoming a golem, but you get to call on them for help during the final battle against the Archdemon. Guess which option Fred always chooses. Yeah. A secret psychopath, Fred. This is Fred who, like, whinges whenever I kill a dog or a wolf on my live streams. It, like, reduces Fred to an emotional mess whenever I kill a wolf or a dog. And yet he's quite happy to condemn countless numbers of dwarves to becoming golems. That's apparently fine on you know, Fred's morality scale. So a few honourable mentions. Under G, we have griffins, which I did mention briefly during the Grey Warden's entry. I was going to give them an entry of their own, but then I was like, they're probably going to become more relevant in Veilguard. So, you know, I would probably have like so much more to say about them after Veilguard comes out. So I thought we'll leave them for now. Goldana, half-sister of Alistair, who is not actually his half-sister. who we encounter in Origins, and the Grand Necropolis in Navarra, which again, I was going to do an entry on, but then I was like, we'll know more about it after Veilguard, so it seems kind of pointless doing an entry on it now. Yes, so that was G, which means next H. And I should say thank you to Fred for volunteering to help out with some of the entries on this episode. Well, I say volunteering. He's currently chained up in my attic, actually, but it's fine. He's got water, I think. I remember to give him water. It's fine. Do you know what? It's fine. It's fine. I'll see you tomorrow, my darlings. Shush. No. Go away. Star, go away. Star, go away. Star, go away. No, you're not coming up here. No. Star, no. Go away. Go away. No, you're not coming up here. I refuse. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, Star.